everyone, and thank you for joining us on The World Today. I'm Anne Nwawado. Here's what's coming up this hour. Relatives hold funerals for family members killed in the wedding day disaster in Nineveh province. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump subject of chaotic debate in California, even though he did not attend. Plus, Army in the U.S. Private Travis King returned home to the United States after being expelled from North Korea. Once again, welcome. It's been a day of funerals for victims of the fire at a wedding disaster in Nineveh province in Iraq, where more than 100 people died. Hundreds gathered at the Syriac Catholic Church of the Immaculate Conception in Hamadiya district to bid farewell to those killed on Tuesday night. The Iraqi Prime Minister, Mohammed Shia al-Sudani, has ordered an investigation into the blaze. He was in the district to inspect the site of the fire and meet with families of the victims and the survivors. Calls for accountability grew on Thursday for the victims of a deadly fire at an Iraqi wedding celebration in a Christian town as grief-stricken mourners attended a packed church memorial service for their loved ones. In a sermon interrupted at times by the wails of women clad in black, a priest of Al-Tahira Church in Hamdaniya, also known as Karakosh, told mourners that Iraq had been united in grief but criticized officials for corruption and favoritism. Hundreds of family members gathered to mourn the loss of their loved ones in northern Iraq's Nineveh province after the deadly fire sparked by fireworks at a wedding turned what should have been a day of celebration into tragedy. On Wednesday, hundreds gathered to attend the funerals of a number of the victims. Families clutching photos of their loved ones prayed and sobbed as coffins were carried for the burial. Survivors said hundreds of people were at the wedding celebration, which followed an earlier church service, and the fire began at about 1 hour into the event when flares ignited a ceiling decoration as the bride and groom danced. At least 100 people were killed and hundreds others injured when the blaze ripped through the banquet hall. Sparks from the pyrotechnics machine are believed to have set the ceiling panels on fire, sending panicked guests rushing for the exits. Though the bride and groom were initially feared to be among the casualties, it was later reported that they had survived. Several staff members and the owner of the venue have been arrested on Wednesday as an investigation into the incident is now underway. The Iraqi government has announced 3 days of mourning following the heartbreaking tragedy. Indeed, a heartbreaking incident, but from that tragedy to another, but this time in Uzbekistan. One person was killed in a powerful explosion at a warehouse near Tashkent airport. It sparked a fire and then shattered windows in the apartment blocks nearby. The dead was a teenage boy after a window frame fell on him. 162 people were injured in that incident. 24 of them have been hospitalized. Flight operations have resumed at the international airport in the capital. A special laboratory has also been set up at the scene to investigate the blast. Welcome back. Checking in on the situation in NagornoKarabakh, where hundreds of Armenians have been seizing the opportunity to leave, not trusting the deal struck with Azerbaijan. Authorities in that region have now ordered the dismantling of state institutions by the end of the year, as a separatist state will cease to exist from 1st of January next year. That decision came in a decree signed by the region's separatist president, Samvel Shahramanyan, as more than half of the 120,000 ethnic Armenians who lived there flee. The document cited the ceasefire agreement just last week, which ended the fighting. And that agreement states that Azerbaijan will now allow free, voluntary and unhindered movement in the region for all residents. In the meantime, the United States Department says that it will work with allies and partners in the coming days on the international monitoring mission after Azerbaijan took control of a NagornoKarabakh region in the lighting offensive last week. The spokesperson, Matthew Miller, told reporters while Russia has at times facilitated negotiations, which of course has been very helpful, its role in the past week has not been productive.
Number one, we want to see the ceasefire maintained. Number two, we want to see humanitarian needs addressed. That means keeping the Lachin corridor open. It means ensuring that humanitarian supplies can come in. And that it means an international monitoring mission to ensure that humanitarian needs are addressed. And I will say that we did welcome the comments by the government of Azerbaijan just a little while ago before I came out to this podium that they would welcome such an international monitoring mission. That's something that the Secretary had directly pushed the President for, and we're glad to see his having agreed to it. And we will work with our allies and partners in the coming days to flesh out exactly what that mission will look like. We have seen them at times. There have been times where they facilitated negotiations, and that was something that we welcomed, but certainly in the last week their role has not been productive in this situation.
And European Union migration ministers are meeting in Brussels today to discuss how to handle migrants arriving by sea as Italy and Germany worry over increased immigration, with Berlin launching border controls inside Europe's most open for travel. But the ministers will have another go at agreeing a long-term stalled mechanism to share out asylum seekers who reach Europe beyond regular border posts, and then discuss whether the 27-nation bloc could seek a deal with Egypt to prevent more people from embarking from the southern shores of the Mediterranean. Critics have said a recent such agreement with Tunisia falls short on human rights, but more potential deals are on the cards as Rome sounds alarm over Lampedusa arrivals, topping those in the year 2022 when Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni won national elections on an anti-immigration ticket. A focus is now on Germany and whether Interior Minister Franz Seehofer brings a coalition deal to Brussels that would allow Berlin to back the so-called crisis mechanism for distributing refugees and migrants in the bloc, all to avoid overwhelming Italy and other countries of first entry.
Ministers will today agree to extend the temporary protection status to 4 million Ukrainian refugees. We proposed this last Monday, and I'm very hopeful that we'll have the Council agreement today.
Let's talk politics in America now. Wednesday night saw the second Republican presidential debate with one prominent candidate, former President Donald Trump, absent. The lineup last night was Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, and former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, businessman Vivek Ramaswamy, and the former Vice President Mike Pence. As we said earlier, Mr. Trump was not at that debate in person, but that did not stop the candidates going after him, attacking his non-appearance and his policies.
There's one person on this. This is infuriating because TikTok is one of.
Because Joe Biden hides in his basement and won't answer as to why he's raising the debt the way he's done. And Donald Trump hides behind the walls of his golf clubs and won't show up here to answer questions like all the rest of us are up here to answer. He put $7 trillion on the debt. He should be in this room to answer those questions for the people you talk about who are suffering. And if the government closes, it's the blame. It is to the blame of everyone in Washington, D.C., who has failed to do their job and just plays to the grandstand.
You know, my former running mate, Donald Trump, actually has a plan to start to consolidate more power in Washington, D.C., consolidate more power in the executive branch. If I'm president of the United States, it's my intention to make the federal government smaller by returning to the states those resources and programs that are rightfully theirs under the 10th Amendment of the Constitution.
And I reject this idea that pro-lifers are to blame for midterm defeats. I think there's other reasons for that. The former president, he's missing in action tonight. He's had a lot to say about that. He should be here explaining his comments to try to say that pro-life protections are somehow a terrible thing. I want him to look into the eyes and tell people who've been fighting this fight for a long time.
Well, American media has described the debate last night as messy, but as it ended, none of the 7 candidates on stage appeared to have secured the sort of breakout moments that would alter the dynamics of a primary contest that Mr. Trump has been nominated for months, despite his 4 criminal indictments, which went virtually unmentioned during the 2-hour broadcast. Mr. Trump, who led his nearest rival for the nomination by 37% in the most recent Reuters poll, skipped that debate as he did the first one in Wisconsin just last month. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis used his first answer to call out Mr. Trump for being missing in action and for adding trillions of dollars to the national debt. DeSantis, whose poll numbers have declined after he was widely seen as the leading Trump alternative, has been more willing to attack the frontrunner recently after months of avoiding direct confrontation. As for Mike Pence, the vice president under Trump from 2017 to 2021, he offered a mild critique of Mr. Trump's desire to centralize power in the federal government, vowing to give back power to the states. For former United Nations Ambassador Nikki Haley, she said Trump had taken the wrong approach on China by focusing exclusively on trade rather than border security issues.
Nobody is going to win this race leaving the America First movement behind. And I was the sole America First conservative on that stage today. But I'm going to do things a little differently on my watch. To be honest with you, these are good people trapped in a bad and poisonous political system. And so at the first debate, I have to acknowledge, I was a little surprised that they came for me. And so, I was kind of reactionary in that first debate. And that's okay. But I'm at a phase of the race right now where we're running for this country. I'm not running against any of those other candidates. I think many of them were bothered by my presence in this race. That's okay. Many of them are good people. We're not a nation founded on perfection. We're founded on the pursuit of a more perfect world, the pursuit of liberty, equality, and justice for all. And I think that I tried my best, even in the face of attacks, to channel that on the stage. I think we succeeded at it. I think a lot of the other candidates, I was disappointed in some of the personal insults, but that's okay.
This is a time for choosing, for Republicans to choose between whether we're going to stay on our time-honored principles. We got a great debate on November. Defined our movement for the last 50 years, or whether we're going to walk away from American leadership in the world, whether we're going to walk away from fiscal responsibility or the right to life. And I thought we continued that debate.
I think Ronald Reagan would have been, deeply concerned about some of the comments about that somehow America First means that we don't work with our allies, that somehow we can concede Ukraine to Russia, Taiwan to China, and this deal that we did with Iran recently is just completely ridiculous, where somehow, the first rule of national security, don't negotiate with terrorists, and that's what the Biden administration is doing.
Though the former U.S. President Donald Trump did not make the presidential debate, just a day before he was in Michigan, where auto workers have been striking over increased pay. Mr. Trump said that it was not important whether the striking union workers secured a favorable deal in negotiations with big car makers, but because the shift to electric vehicles will soon make them obsolete. Current President Joe Biden, who's being in Michigan on Tuesday, joined the picket line to show solidarity with the United Auto Workers Union members, backing their call for a 40% pay rise and improved working conditions.
Biden's mandate isn't a government regulation. It's a government assassination of your jobs and of your industry. The auto industry is being assassinated. And it makes no difference what you get. Do me a favor, just get your union guys, your leaders, to endorse me, okay? And I'll take care of the rest.
Well, how did the auto workers feel about the former president stopping over, and what did they make of his comments? A few of them shared their thoughts on this issue.
To echo what he was saying, I think that making electric vehicles mandatory for people to have and stopping gas-powered vehicles is a no-no. He's talking about how we need choice, and that's the thing. When you get rid of all the gasoline-powered vehicles, it's going to screw everything up. And everybody thinks that this electric vehicle way of thinking is so clean and all that, but when you dig deeper, it's really not. And President Trump dealt with all those topics today, and I think he did a nice job, as always.
I was born and raised in Michigan, and he is for the little guy. We have been to many rallies, and you see people come in suits down to seriously, like they're, you know, janitors or they're hardworking, you know, service industry people. And he is for everybody, young and old. I'm here with my son, young, both of my children. I love the conservative values, so I think he's going to do fine with them. I think the UAW right now, they want to get a job done. They want 40%. Personally, that is a lot. And a lot of people in Michigan aren't making that. We're struggling in Michigan.
Well, our correspondent in Washington, Maria Bird, joins us now for more. Hello, Maria.
Hello, good evening.
All right. It is said there were no clear winners in last night's debate. Now, does this mean the candidates did not do a good job of debating successfully, or what does it really mean?
What this really means is that we're in a very interesting time, especially within the Republican Party, where we're seeing 7 candidates were out debating yesterday evening, which is down from 8 the week before. The real goal with these debates is to see who's going to become the front runner. And obviously yesterday evening we did not get to see that. But the other piece of this is very different than years past, where really the front runner, according to all polls, is the former President Trump, who was not at the debate yesterday evening. And so the question is, what is the real intentions of these debates, since we know the front runner has not participated as of yet?
But Mr. Trump obviously was not there at that debate, but his name came up a few times as expected. What difference would it have made if he had been there, if he had attended that debate?
Yes, if he had attended that debate, I think we would have definitely had a very different conversation. The debate yesterday evening was really about who could be the front runner from the standpoint of being very different in the areas that some of the Republicans have said need to be different as far as the Republican Party, and really making a difference between what many have considered the MAGA Republicans, those who support former President Trump, and those who are more of the traditionalist Republicans. That's what you really saw the debate about yesterday evening, whereas if he was there, we would have been definitely seeing his Make America Great Again. You did see some Republicans in the debate yesterday evening kind of reference some of his ideologies and thoughts that he promoted during his administration. And so we would have definitely seen a galvanizing and a larger support base, which we know that the former president definitely continues to have.
Yeah, we've seen criticisms on former President Donald Trump saying that he did not fulfill many of the policies he had campaigned on. And of course, his campaign had even been criticized for being the same in the last 2 elections. What did the American people think of this?
Well, the American people obviously it's a very divided place at this time, especially when you talk about politics. When you look at those who are supporters of the current administration and those in the Democratic Party, and those who are Republicans who did not believe that President Trump represented the ideologies of America and who are concerned about actually what's occurring today with all the indictments against him and the cases that he's had, those individuals are going to definitely not be in support of the former president. But the former president has brought out a community of individuals who were not traditional voters, those who traditionally did not go out to the polls and vote. And those are the individuals which you're seeing that are pushing the envelope and that are pushing him toward what could potentially be the nominee for the Republican Party.
On the parts of the Democrats, I mean, there's no activity yet on that part regarding presidential candidates so far. Only President Joe Biden has already declared his own intentions. There are also other Democrats hoping to take office from him in next year's election. Are there anyone, I mean, have you seen or heard anyone hoping to take that position for next year's election?
You hear a few other individuals who are coming forth. Typically the incumbent definitely gets the nomination. I don't think we're going to see anything different. You've heard names. Robert Kennedy Jr. has come forth, and there are a couple of others that have come out. But the reality is that it's going to more likely than not be the former president, since we do have already a Biden-Harris campaign. And you can see how even the Democrats within the House and the Senate are looking to support the current president.
Well, as Mr. Trump has now refused to participate in the presidential debates, at least for the first two, he's not appeared in any of them. Will President Biden be willing to participate in debates by his own party? What do you think?
Yes, President Biden will definitely be participating in those debates for sure.
All right, thank you very much, correspondent in Washington. Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much, Maria Bird, and I'll definitely keep tabs on that, and we'll bring updates as soon as we get them. Let's switch gears now to North Korea, which has now adopted a constitutional amendment to enshrine its policy on nuclear force, pledging to accelerate production of nuclear weapons to deter what Leader Kim calls provocation. Well, state media says North Korea's rubber stamp parliament, the Supreme People's Assembly, unanimously adopted a two-day meeting which ended on Wednesday. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un called for exponentially boosting the production of nuclear weapons and diversifying the nuclear strike, which means deploying them to different services, saying that the U.S. has gone to extremes in military provocations with drills and deployment of strategic assets in the region. The amendment comes just 1 year after Mr. Kim and a North Korean official enshrined in the law the right to use preemptive nuclear strikes to protect itself, a move Mr. Kim had said would make its nuclear status irreversible. U.S. Army Private Travis King is back on U.S. soil at the military base in Texas following his expulsion from North Korea, where he has defected from South Korea 2 months ago. Travis arrived at the joint base in San Antonio early this morning after he was handed over to U.S. custody on Wednesday. While details about the diplomacy that led to King's transfer remain scarce, the development was a rare example of cooperation between the United States, North Korea, and China. The 23-year-old's neighbor back in his hometown of Racine in Wisconsin is looking forward to his return. Brian Ratliff describes King as a good guy and one he did not want to see anything happen to. North Korea and the United States had requested that China provide necessary assistance in the spirit of humanitarianism regarding the U.S. soldier Travis.
Yeah, I've been here for about 6 years. Okay. So I've seen him grow a little bit. Okay. From a teenager to a man. So in that time, I've never even heard him raise his voice, or be aggressive towards anybody or anyone. So it's a shock to my knowledge that he is in that situation. I'm still in awe that it happened to him. So. Hopefully he makes it home safe, and the guy's a good guy, and I hate to see anything more happen to him than he's already been through enough, I'm sure. So yeah, I just want to see him come back, and be safe.
China has called Taiwan's newly unveiled self-made submarine as overestimating itself and attempting something impossible. It comes as Taiwan revealed its first domestically developed submarine today, a major step in a project aimed at strengthening the island's defense and deterrence against Chinese Navy, though it won't ever service for another 2 years. Taiwan, which China claims as its own territory, has made the indigenous submarine program a key part of an ambitious project to modernize its armed forces as Beijing stages almost daily military exercises to assert its sovereignty. Taiwan's Foreign Minister Joseph Wu has said that China's leadership knows that using armed threats around Taiwan to try and force an outcome to Beijing's liking in election will not work. China has, over the past 3 years, stepped up its military activities around Taiwan, including holding war games, and over the past month, they staged more drills, which China said was aimed at combating the arrogance of separatist forces. Taiwan will hold its next presidential and paramilitary election in January. Wu says that China is preparing for a possible future attack against Taiwan, including how they will deal with the U.S. intervention. But China has never renounced the use of force to bring democratically governed Taiwan under its control, viewing the island as one of its provinces.
The historical lesson that the more China adopts a forceful way of intervening in our election, it's going to backfire. And I think the Chinese leaders know that very well. So it's not likely for them to do anything major to threaten Taiwan or anything so visible that the Taiwanese people understand that they are trying to intervene in our election. So from this angle, or from this perspective of analysis, it's not likely or less likely that China would do anything major over the maritime domain or even their Air Force incursions. And thanks to the diplomatic allies and like-minded partners who has been speaking out, over the period of UN General Assembly, I think our voice has been heard, and we certainly hope that after all these efforts, Taiwan will be allowed to participate in the UN or UN affiliated organizations. Despite that, it's still difficult. Even though we understand it's still difficult, but we try to locate the root cause for the difficulties or growing difficulties of Taiwan's participation in the United Nations.
In Bangladesh, authorities say nearly 1,000 people have died of dengue in the country in recent weeks, citing the most severe outbreak of the disease yet. Extraordinarily wet monsoons have made it easier for mosquitoes that carry the dengue virus to breed in dirty and stagnant water. Officials have struggled to contain the spread of the fever. Hospitals have also been critically overwhelmed. Dengue is an endemic in the tropical countries. The outbreaks often occur in urban areas with poor sanitation that allow virus-carrying mosquitoes to multiply. It used to be a seasonal disease in Bangladesh, but due to hotter and wetter monsoons brought about by climate change, it has been occurring more frequently since the first recorded outbreak back in 2000. But public health officials have said the current wave of infections caught the country off guard, as it is caused by a stronger strain of the virus. To security now, Burkina Faso's junta has detained 4 army officers it says may have participated in a foiled coup attempt in the country on Wednesday. 2 officers, it says, are still on the run. The military prosecutor says that it has begun an investigation into what actually happened and has appealed for witnesses to come forward. Even before the announcement that the coup plot had been foiled, there were signs that it was not well within the armed forces. 3 weeks ago, there was another move against the ruling junta. In Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger military men used a deteriorating security situation as justification for seizing power. Meanwhile, Nigerians have been reacting to France's ambassador leaving the country as a result of its recent coup. One resident says that it was the first step and called for the transitional government to question the French military base in the country. Another person said the ambassador left early in the morning due to embarrassment, knowing the Nigerian people would have accompanied her to the airport. Others feel the French government should have negotiated with the Nigerian authorities. For relations between Niger and France, its former colonial ruler, which maintained a military presence in the country to help fight Islamist insurgents, have broken down since the army officers seized power in Niamey in July, and the junta had ordered French ambassador to leave the country within 48 hours at the end of August, just in response to what they have described as actions by France that were contrary to the interests of Niger. Well, guess who is turning 99 this weekend? It's none other than former U.S. President Jimmy Carter. He was one-term Democrat who left office back in 1981, but has lived longer after leaving the White House than any former president in U.S. history. In recent years, the Georgia native has suffered from several health issues, including melanoma that spread to his liver and his brain, although he had responded very well to treatment he had received. The Carter Center announced in February that he will receive hospice care and also spend his remaining time at home with his family instead of seeing additional medical intervention. The former peanut farmer's rocky 4 years at the helm of the country were marred by economic woes at home and the Iran hostage crisis that ended just after he left office. But Mr. Carter also played a central role in brokering the Camp David Accords, which led to the landmark Egypt-Israeli peace treaty. I will say happy birthday to him. On that note, we end the World Today today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. Please stay safe.